بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, last week we talked about the concept of sadaqatul jariyah. This is a very beautiful system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made, the Islamic system of royalties, if you will. And this is considered the highest form of income in our society, having royalties, meaning you did something, you wrote something, you are influential in some way, such that your wealth will be expounded continuously, and you don't really have to do anything. So you set something in place, and then you continuously gain and reap the benefits of that. So this is not a new system. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this in our deen as well, the system of royalties. And this is a huge form of incentive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us that motivation so that we do more good deeds. The hadith that I quoted last week, I'll quote it again, narrated by Imam Ibn Majah. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, he reports that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Inna mimma yalhaqul mu'min min amalihi wa hasanatihi ba'da mawtihi ilman alimahu wa nashara." Among the various things that will follow a person after they die, meaning they did something good in their life in dunya. After they die, that good deed is still continuing, and thus they are still reaping the rewards after they're dead. They're in their grave, and they're still getting good deeds. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this hadith, he counts many different things that can fall under that category, which is known as sadaqah jariyah. Now, before I list these things, sadaqah jariyah, sadaqah means charity, jariyah means that which flows. So this is a flowing charity. The comparison is between this and a river. A river continuously flows. Right? You can pour some water in a river, that water will go away and more water will come, and it'll keep on doing that. As long as water is there, it'll keep on flowing. So similarly, this sadaqah is so important and so powerful. As long as it is being utilized, as long as people are benefiting from it, you will keep reaping the rewards, irrespective of whether you are alive or not. So this is royalties, greater than the royalties that we experience, because that finishes when you die. This has no finish. The ending of it is only in Yawm al-Qiyamah, when no one is going to be benefiting from it. So what are these things? The first thing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions, ilman alimahu wa nashara. Knowledge that a person learns, and then they spread that knowledge. So if you spend time and you learn this deen, Quran, Sunnah, fiqh, etc., various aspects of the deen, you learn something from it, and you taught someone, then this person, they practice on what they learned, they also learn, and then they teach someone else, and then it causes a domino or a snowball effect. So this is something that even if you die, but that knowledge that you taught, all of these people are practicing it after you die, you're going to continuously receive that benefit. So those who are receiving the most benefit is, of course, the Sahaba radiallahu anhu. If it was not for the Sahaba, we would not have anything. So the Sahaba pass it on to the Tabi'een pass it on to the next generation, so on and so forth. 1400 years later, we are still saying their names. Abu Hurairah is narrating this hadith, and we are still benefiting from them. So every time I read this hadith or any other hadith, and the narrator is Abu Hurairah, he is in his grave, radiallahu anhu, and he's receiving more and more rewards continuously still, because he has spread this knowledge. He heard something from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he gave it to the next generation. This is how important it is for us to preserve the deen and pass it on. It will be a source of you benefiting in your grave. Number two, awaladan salihan taraka. Someone had a pious child. They raised this child in the best manner possible, teaching them the deen, showing them how to practice. This person became a very pious individual. Their good deeds is going to be on the scale of their parents as well. And that is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in another hadith he says that the parents of the Hafidhul Quran, and what is a Hafidhul Quran? One who has memorized the Quran and put it into practice. We often forget the second portion. We say a Hafidhul Quran, he just memorized the Quran. And we forget to say that a true Hafidh is one who also puts the Quran into practice. That person's parents on Yawm al-Qiyamah will be given a crown on their head out of honor. The brightness of the crown will cause the sun to be dim. You know, when the sun comes out, you can no longer see the stars because the sun is so powerful. It's not that the stars go away, the stars are still there. It's not visible anymore because of the power of the sun. This crown will be so great that even the sun will be like the stars. It'll go away. You won't be able to see it. This is the parents of the Hafiz. So a pious child, the parents will reap the benefits and rewards of this child. Number 3, أو مصحفا ورثة. This person had a mushaf, a copy of the Quran. And when they passed away, they gave it to someone else before they passed, and this other person is reading from that mushaf. Every time they read from this Quran, that person who originally owned it and gave it as a gift, he will be getting reward. So this is a huge ni'mah. If you give someone a Quran and they read from that Quran, you're going to be benefiting from it as well. This is something we can all do. Buy a Quran. You can supply the masajid with various Qurans, and then anyone who reads from those Qurans, you'll be getting a reward for that. Oh, masjidan banahu. Another way we can get sadaqah jariyah is building a masjid. So when you build a masjid, you were instrumental in whether it was financing or whether it was physically helping build that masjid, or whatever aspect of that masjid required help, and you were there to help people in that regard. Every time someone performs salah in that masjid, every time there's a program, every time there's a Jummah khutbah, whatever is happening in that masjid, you will be getting a share of that reward. أو بيتا لابن السبيل بناه. Or you built a shelter for people. So people who are traveling, rest stops, a free place where people can go and rest for the night if they're traveling. They used to have these before. And this, every time someone sleeps in those beds or someone is benefiting from that place that you built, you will be getting reward for that. Mind you, in all of these situations, there should be no profit to that individual. You should not be, you can't say that I built a rest stop and it's a hotel where a person rents out a room. You won't be getting sadaqah jariyah in that situation because you're benefiting in dunya. So these are all forms of charity. That is the condition. It must be done for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then when people benefit from it, then you get rewards for that. So, there's also a difference of opinion. Some people say that scholars who write books and then sell the books, will they be truly getting the sadaqah jariyah in that situation? Previously in the past, many scholars, they were not expecting to get any money from their books. There was no publications. They would write for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all of this, we have to check our intentions regarding them. Another one, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, Nahran ajrahu. There is a source of water, and there's a village that is a little bit far from that, so they have to travel maybe a few miles to get that water. So what a person does is they spend a lot of money and they build a canal from that river, and it causes water to come to those people. Now they don't have to walk a few miles to get the water. So this is a sadaqah jariyah as well. أو صدقة أخرجها من ماله في صحته وحياته تلحقه من بعد موته. Or any other form of sadaqah. Whatever type of charity that you are giving and it continuously builds after a while, there's residual growth in that, you will be getting reward after you die. So this is a very important hadith, and this teaches us of the concept of sadaqah jariyah. This is what we should have some portion of our wealth reserved for this at all times. We are donating to some type of effort that can cause a snowball effect, because you'll be dead even if it's a few dollars. You'll see maybe 1,000 years you're in the grave and you're getting more and more rewards. So whatever we can do regarding this, we should try our best. So my purpose was to talk about the importance of masajid and how this is a sadaqah jariyah effort. Such that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that even if you clean the masjid, now many of us, we don't have money. Like, we can't build a $1 million masjid. Of course, we can give something to a project that already exists. We don't have to start a complete new project. You can join in on a project. There's all these people making different types of appeals. You can join in on that and be part of it. But even hypothetically, if we had very little, in one hadith, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, "Ubnul masajid wa akhrijul qumama minha." Build masajid and remove any type of filth and dirt from the masjids. So these are two different commands. One is build a masjid. If you have that capability, you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you financial freedom, you can build a masjid or whatever amount you can give, do that. And another command is to clean the masajid. So not only do you build a masjid, you also should clean the masjids. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, فَمَنْ بَنَى لِلَّهِ مَسْجِدًا بَنَى اللَّهُ لَهُ بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ. If anyone makes a masjid for Allah, condition is it must be for Allah, Allah will build for them a house in Jannah. So think of it, as the masjid is being built, there is a house in Jannah being built at the same time. It has your name on it. So every time you give $1, every time you're doing something to help the masjid effort, there is a house that you cannot see right now. It has your name on it. It's being built. Maybe you gave $100 today. There was a door that was placed into that house in Jannah. Maybe you gave something at another time. The windows were being put there. Maybe you entered the masjid. You just took part in the different types of programs. Then a dome was built over your house. So at the same time, every time we're coming to the masjid, we're cleaning the masjid, we're helping the masjid effort in some way. That house is getting more and more perfected. And the less we do it, the less grand our house will be in the akhirah. So the choice is ours. Now the Sahaba, they heard this beautiful hadith. They said, Ya Rasulullah, wa hadhihi al-masajid allati tubna fi tariq. They said, Oh Rasulullah, what about some of the smaller masajid? We make some small masjids for people who are traveling. They're not very grand, they're not very beautiful. They're a very small place. Do we still get that reward? He said, Na'am, wa ikhrajul qumama minha muhurul huril 'ain. Yes, you will still get that reward. And anytime you take any kind of filth away from the masjid, this is the mahar for your marriage with the hurul 'ain in Jannah. So this is the reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in place for you. There's many different things. Now the masjid is the center and focal point of a Muslim's life. We should be completely attached to the masjid. Traditionally speaking, this is how it was. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to Medina, the first thing, before even figuring out where he is going to live, where his spouse is going to live, he went and he established the masjid. Why? Because this is the life of the believer. It's literally, if you take a metaphor of the human body and make that the Muslim ummah. In one hadith, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that the entire ummah is like one individual. If a portion of the ummah is hurting, then the entire ummah should be in pain. Just like if a person's finger is hurt, then the entire body will be hurt. So take this metaphor and you say that the entire ummah is one human being. The masjid is the heart. It's the core of that entire ummah itself. And so that is why when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to Medina, the first thing he built was the masjid. And this is because a person's life with Allah is connected with the masjid. A person's community life is the center should be the masjid. Traditionally speaking, in the Khilaf of Umar radiallahu anhu, when they started building Islamic cities, everything was connected to the masjid. The city, when they built the blueprint of the city, the center was the masjid, and then you would have hospitals that would lead to the masjid, you would have schools that would lead to the masjid, you had everything in the city, the necessities of the entire city would be connected to the masjid. It's literally the focal point of everything. Now, in today's time, we don't really have that situation, but this is what we should aim and we should strive to make our masajid the center focal point of our lives. Regarding people whose hearts are attached to the masjid, in one hadith, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, there's 7 categories of people. On Yawm al-Qiyamah, they will be under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's shade. Very special types of people. Among them, one of them is a person whose heart is connected to the masjid. Not only is their heart connected to the masjid, but if the heart is connected to the masjid, everything else follows. They're continuously going to the masjid. They're continuously thinking about the masjid, helping the masjid, building the masjid. We often think that, okay, all of these fada'il and virtues is giving some financial benefit to the masjid. Just give some money. But then when it comes to our personal lives, we're not really attached to the masjid. This is not what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is talking about. Not only do you help financially, but you are there for the salahs, you are there for the programs, you are helping physically, you are volunteering in the masjid, you are helping clean the masjid, just like we saw in this hadith previously. All of these needs to be in place. Then we will have this quality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks of in Surah An-Nur, verse 36 and 37. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the Rijalullah. في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال. The houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The houses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed to be raised, meaning the masajid. Inside the masajid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His name is being taken. People are praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala morning and evening. رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises people who are connected to the masjid. First, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the masajid are places where Allah's name is taken. These are sanctuaries. In fact, it is impermissible for a person to come into the masjid and do transactions. You cannot engage in a transaction in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is meant solely for the remembrance of Allah. There's no fighting allowed in the masjid. There's no vulgarity allowed in the masjid. There's certain rules with the masjid. When you come in, you can make the intention of i'tikaf. There's many different things involved in the masjid. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that these are sanctuaries that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created in the dunya. In these sanctuaries, Allah's name is taken. These are the places where Allah is remembered. These are the places where angels frequent. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the next verse, He praises the people who frequent the masajid. He says, these are true people, true men of Allah. Their business and their transactions and their occupations do not make them ghafil and unaware of their duty to Allah. So they're engaged. Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says they do tijara, they do business, they're involved, they have an occupation. That's one thing we have to understand. These are the Sahaba that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about, as well as further generations. They have occupations, they have jobs, they have work, they have school. But when they come to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, none of that matters anymore. It doesn't block them, it doesn't make them negligent of their right to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah's rights upon them. لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله. They still remember Allah. When they come in this sanctuary, this house of Allah, they're no longer worried about what's happening at home. They're no longer worried about what's happening at work. They leave all of that behind. And that is why we step into the masjid with the right foot and we make the dua, "Oh Allah, open for me the doors of your mercy." The doors of Allah's mercy is His dhikr. Being able to leave everything, all of the worries behind that door, you step in with the right foot, you make the dua, "Allahumma aftah li abwaba rahmatik." Open for me these doors. It's the spiritual door of the masjid. So you're entering the physical door, you enter a spiritual door as well. You leave all of those worries behind. You come into the masjid and you think solely about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You establish the salah. You give the zakah. And why do they do this? يَخَافُونَ يَوْمًا تَتَقَلَّبُ فِيهِ الْقُلُوبُ وَالْأَبْصَارُ. These people, they fear Yawm al-Qiyamah. They fear a day of accountability. They know one day is going to come where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask them, why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? So they come into the masjid and they leave all of their worldly concerns outside and they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the masjid. So this is high praise for these people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes. In one hadith, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, أَحَبُّ الْبِلَادِ إِلَى اللَّهِ مَسَاجِدُهَا وَأَبْغَضُ الْبِلَادِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَسْوَاقُهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to be remembered. This is the focal point of your life. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I created humans, I created jinn for the purpose so that they may know me, they may worship me, they may remember me. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, one hadith, he says, the most beloved places to Allah is the masajid. This is the most beloved place that you can be. If you want to get Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attention, come to the masjid. This is what Allah wants. And if you want to be removed from Allah's attention, this does not mean that Allah is unaware of you. It means that you're not getting the barakah, you're not getting the mercy. Then go to the aswaq. Go to the bazaar. Go to the places of shopping and malls, etc. Why is this most hated to Allah? In this hadith, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, the most detested place to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the marketplaces. That is because the dhikr of Allah is less there. People are not worried about the remembrance of Allah. People are trying to sell their items. Sometimes they cheat people, sometimes they lie, sometimes they do all of these different things. And the remembrance of Allah there is very little. And you're connected more to dunya when you're there. So it all revolves around, where can I do the most zikr of Allah? And this is the masjid, the place where you can do the most zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ali radiallahu anhu, in one poem, he says, لا يستوي من يعمر المساجد ومن يبيت راكعا وساجدا يدأب فيها قائما وقاعدا ومن يكر هذا معاندا ومن يرى عن الغبار حائدا. He says, you cannot equate a person who builds and he establishes the masjid and he stays in the masjid. You cannot equate him, and he is a person who is in the masjid, he's doing ruku', he's doing sujood, he stands in the masjid, he's always there, he's reading Quran. This person of Allah who builds a masjid and is staying in the masjid, you cannot say he is equal to a person who runs away from the masjid. A person who you see the dust coming up behind him as he's running away from the masjid. They're not equal. In the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the person who always is coming to the masjid and a person who is not coming into the masjid, they're not the same. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala values a person who frequents the masjid more than a person who does not. And that is because all of the acts of worship that we find in Islam, they have a connection with the masjid. What are the major actions in Islam? Salah. It's done in jama'ah in the masjid. And the reward is greater when done in the masjid. Number 2, zakah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would collect the zakat, it would come into the masjid. He would have fundraisers in the masjid as well, so sadaqat, zakat, etc. would happen in the masjid. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam raised funds in the masjid. Number 3, fasting. There's a strong connection with fasting in the masjid. We break our fast in the masjid. We do suhoor. There's in Ramadan time, you do salatul taraweeh. As well as even hajj. What happens in hajj? People go to the greatest masjid, Masjidul Haram. They're doing tawaf around the masjid. They're staying in the masjid of Allah. So the masjid is the source of all of the ibadah. It's the greatest place where we can go to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah Al-Jinn, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَنَّ الْمَسَاجِدَ لِلَّهِ فَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ أَحَدًا. The masajid belong to Allah. Do not call anyone other than Allah in the masajid. These are the places where you are supposed to come for dhikr. This is a house of dhikr. So when you enter the masjid, it's really unfortunate sometimes we come and we talk about the dunya in the masjid. That's not permissible. We're not supposed to be talking about dunya in the masjid unless it has some connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then it's a matter of deen. This is a sanctuary. This is why we make the dua when we come in. We make the intention of i'tikaf. And when we come out, we also make a dua, oh Allah, protect me. Oh Allah, give me the barakah. Allow me to attain the barakah from outdoors. Now in one hadith, or rather an ayah of the Quran in Surah At-Tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about who deserves to build a masjid. This is very unique because oftentimes we think that, na'udhu billah, we don't say this, but we feel this way. I'm doing Allah a favor. I'm building a masjid for Allah. I'm doing a great thing. I'm doing a favor for Allah. Rather, it is Allah who is doing a favor to you if you are helping a masjid, if you are a volunteer in the masjid, if you are giving any kind of financial aid to a masjid. Allah has benefited you. Allah has decided that I want you to be raised in your ranks in the akhirah, and thus you will give and you will donate to the masjid. In Surah At-Tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَا كَانَ لِلْمُشْرِكِينَ أَنْ يَعْمُرُوا مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ شَاهِدِينَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ بِالْكُفْرِ. It is not allowed, it is not munasib, it is not good that the mushrikeen try to inhabit the masajid of Allah. They try to take credit, and this is in reference to Masjidul Haram in Mecca. The mushrikeen of Mecca, they felt that they were the custodians of the Kaaba. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, they are not adequate to be custodians of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As long as they have kufr in their hearts, they are not allowed to be true custodians. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not accept any kind of benefit they give to the masjid. So here in this ayah we see there's a condition. If you want to be someone who benefits the masjid, you have to have iman in your heart. Also, we can say something and we can extract something from this ayah, that if you are helping the masjid, this is a sign that you have iman. Because Allah says those who have kufr in their hearts are not allowed to benefit the masajid. So if you are benefiting the masjid, this is a sign that there is some spark of iman in your heart. أُولَٰئِكَ حَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُمْ وَفِي النَّارِ هُمْ خَالِدُونَ. These kuffar who claim that they are doing Allah a favor, Allah is referring to the mushrikeen of Mecca in Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's time, they are those whose good deeds, if they even had them, they would be cancelled out because of their kufr, and they will be forever in the fire. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who is actually deserving of building a house for Allah? Who will Allah accept from? And this is what we want. We want to be accepted from Allah. You may donate something to the masjid, but who knows, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this or not? If it's not accepted, it's useless. Allah says, إِنَّمَا يَعْمُرُ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَى الزَّكَاةَ وَلَمْ يَخْشَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Indeed, those who inhabit and build the masjids of Allah, they are those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the last day. They believe in Allah, they believe in Yawm al-Qiyamah. They establish the salah, they pay the zakah, and they fear no one but Allah. These are the true sifat and the true attributes of a person who frequents the masjid. These are who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to come to His house. And if we find ourselves being invited by Allah to the house and us answering that call often, find myself often coming to the house of Allah, perhaps we have these sifat, these attributes. Number one, belief in Allah. Number two, belief in Yawm al-Qiyamah. You are going to be accountable. Number three, the salah itself. You are strict when it comes to salah. You pay the zakah. And the last one, very unique, lam yakhsha illallah. They fear no one but Allah. This is a trait that Allah gives to those who frequent the masajid. They fear no one but Allah. فَعَسَى أُولَٰئِكَ أَنْ يَكُونُوا مِنَ الْمُهْتَدِينَ. Perhaps these are the truly guided people. Allah will give you true guidance if you come to the masjid, if you establish the houses of Allah. And remember, establishing the house of Allah is not just financial aid. We need to change this thought process. Unfortunately, we think that I gave a few $1,000s, I've built a masjid for Allah. But when it comes time for salah, I'm not there. When it comes times for the programs and volunteering and being at the masjid, being active in our community, I'm not there. Then it's, what kind of building of a masjid are we doing? So ideally, when we look at Masjid Nabawi, when we look at all of these traditional masajid, there's a step-by-step process in order to develop a Muslim community. And it always starts with the masjid. Number one, the first thing a community needs is a masjid. Absolute pivotal. If we have a Muslim community and we don't have a masjid, that community is not going to succeed. We need a headquarters. This is what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did. So building the masjid is essential. Once the masjid is built, you don't need to build 5, 10 more across the street. Unfortunately, we think we only learn about the fada'il of building a masjid and not inhabiting the masajid. So we see a person has built a masjid here, 2 streets down we build another masjid. It's not necessary if that's not a requirement for the amount of citizens in that city. If you have a great deal of Muslims, yes, we need another masjid. But once a masjid is built, now we need to invest in that masjid. Unfortunately, oftentimes, maybe not so much here, but traditionally, maybe some of us come from different ethnicities back home, you'll have so many masajid and very few people going to those masajid. And sometimes you even go and you find a certain family, they are invested in one masjid. You'll never find that family going to another masjid. This doesn't become the house of Allah. Now it's your house. It's my family's masjid. This is not acceptable. Rather, we should all come together, build a masjid, a large masjid for that community, and we inhabit the masjid. So once we have a masjid, the second thing we need are scholars. Bring in ulama, bring in people who have knowledge of deen. Because with just a masjid is a structure. We need people who can spread the deen inside. We had a Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam Masjid Nabawi. He built his masjid and he taught from there. So you need a scholar to spread the message of Islam. And thereafter, people need to come. They need to have an organized system of programs, different ways of learning, the maktab system, a system for adults, for children, some hifz, tahfiz, and then, eventually evolve more and then have ulum programs. This is the slow growth level that we need. After that, we can start outreach. Now you're strong, your community is much stronger, you have many people coming to the masajid, you have many programs in the masjid, you're enriching your community. Now people can go out into the parks and to various places, call people towards Islam, and strengthen that community further. Thereafter, once you get a lot more strength in that community, we can have higher systems of education. Have a elementary school, middle school, high school, even colleges. But this is a very lofty goal that we have to aspire to. And finally, you can have an awqaf system, meaning in Islamic societies in the past, masajid were not run by people's donations. They were run by a system called the awqaf. The awqaf is a system, for instance, an example could be that a person has an entire plaza, or the masjid raises funds and they buy an entire plaza, and then they have all of these different suites that are rented out. All of that revenue would come and fund the masajid programs. So then once you have this, it's a recurring system. But all of this starts with the masjid itself. And inshallah, I've taken a lot of time. I want to finish with a very important story, which shows you the importance of the masajid. There's this individual in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's considered like a king or a chieftain of his tribe. His name was Thumama. Thumama, he was very staunch against Islam. He did not like Islam, and he had many quarrels and battles with the Sahaba. Perhaps he killed many Sahaba. And so the mushrikeen, they used to visit Mecca. They used to come to the Kaaba and they used to do tawaf as well from the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam. It doesn't mean they were Muslim. They used to come and do the rites of, fulfill the rites of pilgrimage. So Thumama decided that he is going to visit Mecca. And this is when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba were in Medina. And so he had to pass by Medina in order to come to Mecca. And so some of the Sahaba were, they were looking out as scouts outside of Medina for protection. They found this individual, and they got a notion that he was up to no good. They didn't know who he was. So they brought him to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he saw this individual, he asked them that, do you realize this is Thumama? This is the chieftain of his tribe who was very staunch against Islam, has harmed the Sahaba a great deal. So they were surprised. What Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had done with him is he told the Sahaba to tie him to a pillar in the masjid. So the pillar in Masjid Nabawi, it was just there was no carpet, there was no fans. It was palm tree leaves and dirt, and then some pillars here and there. So they tied Thumama. He was a chieftain, a king. They tied him to a pillar, and he just was stuck there. Anytime he needed to eat, they would bring him food. If he needed to relieve himself, they would allow him to do that, but they would be with him, and then they would tie him back onto that pillar. So every day, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would come to him and he would say, "Ma indaka ya Thumama? What do you have to say for yourself?" So Thumama would say to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that if you kill me, then you deserve to do that. I've done enough harm to you and your people that I understand if you want to kill me. But if you let me go, I'm going to be very thankful. And the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard this and he said, "Is that all?" So that's all he would say, and then Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would leave. The next day he came, and so a whole day would pass. Nothing else, no other interaction with Thumama. But of course, in the masjid programs are going on. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is teaching. The Sahaba are there. The next day he comes. He says, "Ma indaka ya Thumama? What do you have to say for yourself?" Again, he says, "In taqtul idha dam." If you decide to kill me and execute me, I understand. وَإِن تُنْعِمْ تُنْعِمْ عَلَى شَاكِرٍ. If you decide to benefit me and to let me go, I'm going to be very thankful. Again, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't say anything. He left him. Again, Thumama is looking at what's happening in the masjid. 5 times salah, programs by Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, teaching Ashabu Sufa, the Sahaba coming, the community gathering. Third day, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Ma indaka ya Thumama? What do you have to say for yourself?" Again, if you kill me, I understand. If you let me go, I will be thankful. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam turned to the Sahaba. He said, "Atliq Thumama, let him go. There's no benefit to be had from him. Let him go." And so they let him go. And he walks outside of the masjid. There's an oasis nearby. He goes and he does a ghusl. He comes back into the masjid, and I can only imagine Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam there and the Sahaba. He comes into the masjid and he says, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh." I testify there is no one worthy of worship other than Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. He turns to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he says, "O Muhammad, before I was here, your face was the most hated face to me. And today, there's no one more beloved to me than you." What happened to this individual? Did Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam force him to accept Islam? He didn't even say anything to him. He just asked him, "What do you have to say for yourself?" The only difference, the only thing that happened to this person is he was tied in the Masjid Nabawi, the Masjid of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And he saw Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He saw the establishment of Salah. He saw the unity of the Sahaba. He saw the lessons of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And he could not help himself but fall in love with Islam. This is true da'wah. This is true reaching out, outreach to those who are not Muslim, showing them the beauty of Islam. And this is what happened to him, and he accepted Islam, and he greatly helped Islam after that. So this is the story of the Sahaba. This is what could happen if we start inhabiting the masajid, if we start not only donating financially, but donating our hearts to the masajid and our minds as well. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq to be among those whose hearts are attached to the masajid. وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Alhamdulillah, bismillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. We have two announcements. Alhamdulillah, as we mentioned last week, the second part of the hadith